Lowe's knows that your deadlines don't change, even when your job does. But with Lowe's Buy Online, Pick Up in Store, we'll help you adjust on the fly. And when you absolutely can't leave the project, we can deliver to your job site as soon as same day. Lowe's knows pros. We help, you save. Valid on eligible in-stock orders and select zip codes placed by 2 p.m. for same-day delivery by 8 p.m. Subject to driver availability. Fees vary based on purchase. More terms apply. See Lowes.com/same-day delivery for details.
So when it comes to the concept of breaking generational cycles, the biggest question is, how do we heal patterns that are bigger than us? Well, one way to do that is to be okay with being disliked. Guys, welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. Today we are talking about this concept of breaking generational cycles. I think nowadays we're starting to hear more about it, and it sounds like trauma, or it sounds like traditions, right? When it comes to generational cycles that we may have experienced and or recognized in our own lives, the root of it may go back a lot further than we realize. A prime example could be who we choose to be in relationship with, how we deal with money, okay, how we handle stress, how we communicate, even our own diet. All of these things have some level of insight and information in terms of what have I grown up in, what has the environment been, or what has it looked like, and what has been comfortable. The thing about breaking generational cycles is it becomes this idea of how comfortable am I with discomfort? And a lot of times that question will bring to our attention, what have I been doing for a very long time that just feels normal to me, but may actually be abnormal? All right. There have been times I've heard people say, well, yeah, my family, the way they show that they love each other is by yelling and screaming. So that's how I've learned to communicate in my relationships. Or if we are not fighting or we're not arguing, I immediately think that you don't love me or that our relationship is boring. If you come from a very turbulent space or a very turbulent relationship dynamic, you will see very regulating people or very calm people or very healthy people as boring. They won't appeal to you. The reason why is because you are not a reflection of what I'm used to and what I've learned to adapt to. Okay? And even when we start breaking these generational cycles, it looks daunting, or it sounds daunting, because it's like, well, how can I break these pattern of behaviors? A big way to do that is to start having boundaries. All right? And when we talk about boundaries isn't just necessarily for other people. Boundaries is even with yourself. For example, let's say that you are going to visit family for the holidays and you haven't been there for a while. And you know that whenever they cook, the foods typically are a little bit more unhealthier than what you've been practicing. When you go there, the possibility is that you may be either picked on, bullied, or even force-fed, no pun intended, to have the foods that you are used to eating or that you've been eating for a very long time up until this point. And your decision to be healthier may offend some other people, or they may take it as a ways of, well, you're being different, or you're acting brand new. And in reality, you're just trying to heal. All right. Or you're just trying to develop healthier habits. When it comes to breaking generational cycles, you have to do it without permission, and you have to be ready for resistance. Okay. Ready for resistance in such a way, not just externally, but even in your own body. Right? Even if you look at finances, okay, if you've seen in your life that your parents have poor spending habits, or the people that you were raised by, or your environment, there were poor spending habits, there was a heavy focus on superficial things or materialism, and that's been your biggest focal point, now you start to develop these behaviors too and these characteristics. And you notice that you have a hard time saving money, or you never seem to have money for the things that you need. And you are always willing to subject yourself to a certain level of stress or dysregulation, and you'll figure it out. All right. To break that cycle would mean that, okay, I'm going to start budgeting now. I'm going to be a little bit more responsible in what I buy and also like what I consume. And I'm also going to start being more mindful of why I'm purchasing certain things or when I do it. I'm also going to look at why I never have money for the things that I need. And do I actually need these things, or is it just a want? So when it comes to being the cycle breaker, it really will require you to build yourself up on a little bit more trust and also bravery. Okay, we think, or the way we talk about breaking generational curses, like it's just a walk in the park and everybody's going to be on board with it. Well, that's never the case. Okay, what we need to understand is that there is always a certain level of comfort and function in dysfunction, which is why when there's a person who tries to deviate from that, it sends everybody else in a frenzy, because even though we are unhealthy, even though that is something that we may recognize, we also realize this is what allows us to continue to exist and be functional. And for you or anyone else to come in and disrupt that is seen as disrespect, is seen as a breach, okay? It's seen as trying to control or hurt another person. And in reality, you're just trying to take care of yourself and other parties involved. To break a generational cycle really means to understand what your own cycles are and understanding that you do have autonomy. A lot of times, if you look at what you were doing automatically, it could be out of fear of, well, if I don't do this, what will these other people think of me? So I want you to ask yourself, how comfortable am I with being rejected? How comfortable am I being disliked? How comfortable am I being challenged? Some people may refer to you as like, well, you're so picky, okay? You're always doing A, B, and C. And what is your response to that? Okay, do you settle for less because it makes another person feel better about their own habits? Or do you continue to stand on your standards because that's healthy for you? When it comes to cycle breaking, it means that you really have to build yourself up and have a certain level of responsibility and confidence along the way. Right? And this is where it gets hard. And this is where a lot of times people check out. And it's like, you know what? It's just a lot easier to not change up, to not do anything different, and just allow things to be what they are. But we have to realize when we go down that route, it compromises our health. It also compromises our relationships. And we continue to exist in a pattern that is very unhealthy and dysfunctional for us. To break a cycle means to build a new environment for yourself that is much healthier. And to break a cycle also means to be able to build healthier relationships with other people and things. The biggest relationships that we have in life is our relationship to our work, our relationship to our diet, and also our relationship to our finances, and of course, our relationships to other people. If you saw that your parents, all they did was work, okay, they never took time to rest. To rest meant that was an indication of laziness or unproductivity. I want you to ask yourself, how do I feel about taking breaks now? What does a break even look like? Am I willing to work past the point of fatigue and exhaustion? Do I starve myself sometimes because I'm working so much and so hard? And how do I feel about it afterwards? Okay, when it comes to a diet, if I notice that in my family we ate a lot of heavy, fatty foods, or we ate out a lot, do I continue that pattern? And how does my body respond to it? And when my family did eat out, were they happy or were they stressed? And what was their health practices like? Did they exercise often? Okay, or was everybody sitting around watching TV? All right, and what cycle in that am I willing to break or deviate from? Again, even when it comes to a professional aspect, is like, do I choose work environments that are highly stressed and underpaid, where I'm not really valued, but I'm willing to do the work because I'm supposed to bear it without complaint? If I speak up about what's affecting me, then I am now complaining, which means that I am not favorable, which means that no one's going to like me, which means that I'm going to constantly be seen as a problem. So therefore, I stick in spaces. I don't ask for what I need. I don't have boundaries. And I'm willing to do anything that somebody else asks of me in exchange for nothing. Because I saw my parents do that. All right. When it comes to conflict, I noticed that my mom or my dad, they would communicate their anger by stonewalling, by isolating, avoiding, okay, by using certain manipulation tactics to get the other person's attention or our attention as children. Okay, I noticed this is what they did, so I continue to do this. Because the idea of me communicating how I actually feel and what I need seems so foreign and so uncomfortable to me that I'd rather not. Another thing when it comes to, like I said, finances, okay, how did I see my parents or my caregivers or my environment? What did they focus the most on? Okay, was it constantly name brand? Was it materialistic things that gave them a sense of identity? Or did they find ways to invest their finances? Were they smart about their money? Did they teach us to be smart about our finances? And how daunting does it feel to build a different relationship with my money? And do I even think I deserve that? What is my relationship to money? And then finally, when it comes to other people, what are the patterns that I'm noticing in my relationship dynamics? Because sometimes, most times, depending on what we saw in our lives and throughout our development, we will choose those same relationships. So say that my parents did exist in a very unhealthy relationship pattern. That's what I'm going to choose. Naturally. I know it's unhealthy on some level, but I also recognize that, oh yeah, you're supposed to fight. Again, you're supposed to have arguments. You're supposed to have disagreements. This is what love looks like. Or certain things that should not be allowed were bypassed. That's what was okay in my life, so it should be okay in this relationship too. Sometimes breaking cycles means to seek different relationships that actually challenge you to be different. All right? Versus continuing to exist in the same pattern of people. Especially when it comes to dating, a lot of times we will date our pattern before we date a new person. And the reason why we'll date our pattern is because it's like, I know how this is going to end. And because I know how it's going to end, I can always control the outcome. Or I never have to fully invest because I know what kind of person this is. If they're avoidant, they're despondent, they're emotionally unavailable, well, I too can be emotionally unavailable. And I never have to fully commit. But in process, I realize that I'm creating the same cycle of unhappiness. When it comes to breaking cycles in your life, it will require you to be responsible for a lot of other things, and in certain ways, a lot of other people. And I don't mean you having to do everything for them. I mean doing things different from what they taught you. Okay, sometimes when you are breaking cycles, it means you do the best for you versus what somebody thinks is best for you. Because maybe they will steer you in a direction that they know best. Okay, they can only speak from their own experiences, their own willingness to challenge themselves. And that's the advice that they're giving you. So how would you know anything different? All right? To break a cycle means to build yourself up a little bit more steady with a new foundation. And sometimes you may not have the support that you think you need. Sometimes you may not have the support that you desire the most. And sometimes it will feel like you're doing a lot of things wrong. However, you're doing everything that's necessary. And you may ask, well, how do I know I'm doing things right? Well, sometimes you just learn. Okay? Sometimes different is a great definer for, hey, things are changing, right? I'm seeing a different pattern. I'm feeling a little bit different. So that means that I might be, veering off the beaten path. And that's okay. But that's a beautiful thing about your life is you get to decide, what does happiness look like for me? What does financial stability look like for me? What does a healthy relationship look and feel like for me? Not based on what I've observed necessarily, because maybe that wasn't the healthiest. And if it was, great. How can I amplify on that? What pieces did I notice were missing that I can now build into my actual relationships? What are my self-love habits? How did I watch the people around me value themselves? What was that? What was a obvious indicator that this person really valued themselves? Was it what they had? Was it how they functioned through life? How do they deal with stress? Okay, how do they deal with sadness? How do they deal with other people's stress and sadness? To break cycles means that you have to break certain habits that will break some people's hearts. But it is worth it, because in that process, like a bone, sometimes you break it and it heals back stronger. When you break cycles, that means that you have the opportunity to actually heal now. And you heal the collective in process. So I want you to take a look at, what does it mean to break generational cycles? And do you feel that you're breaking cycles now, or do you feel like you're very resistant to doing things differently, even though you may recognize there are certain dysfunctional patterns that deserve to be changed? Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, take flight.